Welcome to a Cryptic Corner, my beauties and bees, the place where we explore the unexplained, the supernatural, the paranormal and hidden, the mysterious, the alien, the accursed, and the forbidden. I am your host, Bumblebee, and thank you guys for joining me tonight for a little episode of Cryptic Corner, and thank you to my lovely live from the Hive viewers over here watching us on Saturday morning. You too can be part of this little elite crowd by joining us here on YouTube every Saturday morning at 9:30 a.m. I'm sticking the thumbtack in that time. I don't like doing the later times, so we will continue on the time that I've always had. It's a good time slot. I like it. It gives me stuff to work with, and it gives me flexibility on my weekends. So we're going to stick with it because I'm going to start doing stuff now. It's the middle of summer, and I haven't done anything yet this summer. I'm about to turn 40. So if you're watching this on Friday, I might already be 40 because I am going to be... How many days do I have left? I've got 6 days. 6 days left in my 30s. So, yeah. All right, so there are some Cryptic Corner points I want to touch on here. We have been doing more cryptic community stuff. I did hang out with Sasquatch Secrets, Nikki over there. She's a friend of mine, pretty cool. We hung out and did the Independence Day Bigfoot video. That was fun. I mirrored it on my channel if you haven't watched it. I also did just a couple days ago. So I did the Legend of Boggy Creek with Captive Desk Dave. So if you didn't check that out, we cover that little gem of a mockumentary. And then this last week on the 5th, I did a review of the 75 years later Roswell crash. Well, as this is Roswell week, we are going to be revisiting that location today. But please remember to check out the other great things coming out of the Cryptic Corner, because the Cryptic Review is a new segment where I have a guest on and we review a video or documentary. I hope to do more of that in the future. So, and also, again, branching out into the cryptozoological community. I am probably going to make, now that the Threads is a thing, I'm probably going to make Cryptic Corner its own thread account and just post cryptozoology and that kind of stuff over there. So you can follow both me, Bumblebee, and you'll be able to follow Cryptic Corner as a separate entity where we specialize in busting cryptozoology and stuff like that. So keep your eyes out for that as well. I may make a Twitter account for it. Right now, Twitter's on fire, and the guy running it's like, oh, it's supposed to be on fire, instead of trying to put it out. He's like, this is how it's supposed to be, which is disgusting. So, yeah, Threads dropped. Last I checked, 70 million people had downloaded it. That was yesterday morning. I haven't looked again, but I'm on there right now already as HiveSci, HIVESCI. Follow me on Threads. I haven't posted much. I've just buzzed in and mentioned that I'm on Threads, and Stephanie Helms is on there with, or Stephanie. Yeah, Stephanie's there. Stephanie sent me a friend's request or what have you. There's no private messaging system yet. So anyway, this is off topic for Cryptic Corner, but Cryptic Corner will begin to have its own social media presence as well. It'll help me navigate the cryptic community a little bit better, I think. But we'll see. Anyway, on to the topic. So, recently, there's been claims of a second crash site, a second debris field, if you will, from the Roswell incident, based on the Richards Ranch report. So let's pop over and first things first. Yeah, we're gonna we're going to scope out the region. So that will be, wait a second, where are we? There you are. Okay, that'll be the primary focus. So we're in, the south central New Mexico, right? Like this area here. And these are our sites. I've marked them as favorites on the map so that we can keep track of them. All right. So there's the Richards Ranch. And then over here are a couple of markers for the crash site. This is the longitude latitude marker. It doesn't necessarily look like a debris field to me. But maybe. And then you have this one, which is the public access one or what have you. And there's actually, you can actually drop down into this one. This is the one that me and Sidney Davis Jr. Looked at. And it talks about the unidentified crash or sighting here. And there's a pillar of rocks. I don't know why they built a pillar instead of building a circle. I think a circle would go more with the... But what do I know? I'm not commemorating the crash. These guys are. So someone did spend some money on this, though, because if you've ever had to finance a grave marker for a loved one, you know how expensive these big blocks of stone are. Yeah. But it's pretty wide open and barren here. Now, if the type of weather balloon that is generally presented as the one that was responsible for the Roswell crash has like a link, like a chain of singular balloons and with mylar and reflective tails and stuff hanging down from them, and there's a chain of them that they released. They were trying to create like a web up there to listen for Soviet bomb test, and see if it was basically a test to see if that would be a viable option. And I think it was a failure, and then nobody was supposed to know about it. But yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself. There's an interview here that I want to dive into. So without further ado, let's let these guys talk.
I want to start with you, Don, and dive right in. What can you tell us, Don, about this second debris field, where it is in proximity to the first debris field that was found, and if there's any new information involving the second debris field?
Well, it's actually a impact site. That's in fact.
So he says it's not a debris field, it's an impact site, which is interesting and should show up more on the map, right? He's going to try to give us the location, though. We're going to try to find it.
What do we call it? The remains of a egg-shaped pod about the size of a Volkswagen Beetle, based on all the eyewitness accounts, including military and civilian, describe this location about 35 to 40 miles north of Roswell. And it's where this pod and...
Always appreciate you popping in, Ring.
And its crew, a number of bodies, and a survivor based on, again, first-hand testimony were recovered back at the time.
No, I will not be starting my own separate music channel. I have had several music channels. If you knew how to look, you could probably find some of my music videos. I didn't, not me doing it. It was just me. Basically, I had a channel that I practiced music on that and wrote songs on and played silly stuff. Yeah.
Time of the incident.
Ben, when you go out to these sites, when you went out to this second debris field, as it's been called, I mean, what can you do now since it's been so long? How do the metal detectors work? Sort of walk us through the process when you and the other investigators go out there.
Well, it's actually been really exciting for us because I've been out now about 3 or 4 times to the site, which is near Corona. That's about 2.5 hours out from Roswell, the actual, what we call the debris field. The new site, though, like Don says, is kind of the impact site.
So Corona, hold on, we're going to go back to the map. So Corona is a little town, and I mean little town. Which way's up? There we go. A little town this way. think that's too far. Where are you, Corona? Why are you not showing up on my map? There it is, Corona. Little tiny, tiny town. We can drop down in there real quick, just to give you a kind of a look at where we're, really stereotypical southwestern town, right? It's got all the little stops along the highway that you expect. There's businesses up here. Yeah, I think that was some businesses and things like this. I don't know if you've ever taken take a Southwest road trip. This is the kind of stuff that you stop at. They'll have like souvenirs and stuff. Now Roswell itself has a lot of souvenir shops and things like that too. But this place doesn't generally attract UFO attention, and because this place was actually closer, allegedly, to the crash site, right? But, which tells me, because Roswell, the reason Roswell got tied into it is because Roswell had the Air Force Base, right? But the second crash site is somewhere in this region right here. We're going to let these guys keep talking.
Which is only about 40 minutes outside the city, and we go out there, we try to systematically see from Corona in towards town what kind of direction it may have been going, and therefore where we want to focus on the scope of the ground search. We had a backhoe, we had several people doing kind of grid searches. We don't even know if this material is metallic, so that's a big problem, right?
Sorry,
so
the fan was making my eyes water.
It's anomalous. We take that. We mark it just like you'd be, doing a crime scene investigation, and then we go get it analyzed to see if anything, shows up that would be not even just necessarily exotic material, but something that could have been made here, but seems.
So, I mean, and that looks pretty much like the whole area right there. There's miles and miles and miles of this, what they're showing right here in this image. So it's hard to pin down what they're talking about. When he's talking about an impact site, I would expect there to be some kind of disturbed earth, right? There's some kind of disturbed patch of desert with, the soil turned up. But also it's been 75 years ago, so.
Out of place. I mean, we're looking at every possible option right now.
Don, has anything of interest been found out there? I mean, I would have to think if the reports are true that something crashed out there and the government was involved, I would have assumed that they would have gotten everything back then. I mean, are there still items to be found, do you think?
Well, we would not be wasting time if we didn't feel that we could make at least certain confirmations. We certainly have plans to return back to the debris field.
Let's see. Lead investigator, International UFO Museum and Research Center, former co-director J. Allen Hynek, Center of UFO Studies, American representative, International Coalition for Extraterrestrial Research. So this is Donald Schmidt. I'm gonna let him keep talking over here. I'm gonna pull something up.
And mainly because there were traces, elements, artifacts that were discovered for decades thereafter. And that was an area that covered almost a mile long in scope. And as a result, as any crash investigator would tell you, that there's absolutely no way that they could possibly recover every last piece of evidence. And so with the constant wind and rain erosion, that things come to the surface. And as a result, the Air Force has been out there for decades as well. In fact, the ranchers would confirm that they have been catching Air Force officers out there, even into recent times, still searching and making sure that every last piece was recovered.
Ben, I would imagine a lot of the people who may have been witnesses back in the 40s have now...
Now, I will say that everything I've looked up about plane crashes and things like that, that's true. That they never... That a debris field from an impact crash... it's scattered over generally a broad area, and some of it is dug and buried into the earth. It doesn't just scatter into the air, it also scatters into the ground, even though it doesn't scatter so far, and every piece that goes into the air has potential to bury itself or embed itself in the earth too. It gets pretty crazy the way things get thrown and Especially if there's explosions involved and decompression involved. But carry on.
Passed away because it's been so long. Is there anyone still alive? I mean, is someone documenting what they said? Because obviously it's going to be more difficult to investigate now without, people who survived.
Well, that's a great question. In fact, what I guess you could say kind of sold me on Roswell, that something happened here, was the first book that I ever read that was authored by Don here. And when I saw the number,
I think that's probably the book Witness to Roswell, where he had like interviews and testimonies of all the people that he could that were alive around that time and involved in some way, which would be like all the people of Corona if you think about it, because little town, less than 100 people, and they actually brought the alleged craft to Corona, to a ranch. They brought it into town from the Richards Ranch. People did. So I don't know. That you think everybody that lived in that town would have had something to say about it?
Number of witnesses, hundreds, both firsthand and secondhand, that came forward. I wanted to know, is there anyone still alive I could talk to? And I had the chance to interview someone who was a child at the time who handled the material. Her dad was with the fire department, brought it home.
And we did watch that interview with her on the 5th. What day of the week was that? I keep just saying the 5th. That was on Wednesday. Yeah. So we watched the interview with her, the daughter of this the farmer or rancher or whatever that found this stuff, and she insisted that she got to hold it, and they threatened her with death. It was pretty wild. It's all aliens though. Yeah.
She handled it there at the kitchen table, and in a matter of time, the military police came over and actually threatened her with her life. And when she retold this story to me, she's now passed, but she was in tears, and you could see the emotion that she legitimately felt, that she thought she was going to be removed from her family and killed if she ever talked about this. So I had another witness, the son.
The interview that we watched was from like the 80s, I think, or maybe the 90s, but she was a lot younger at that point, but she did get all emotional about it. I feel like, yeah, she did have some sort of experience, right? And they did threaten her or scare her. They did traumatize this poor woman or poor child at the time just for having said she held some weird material. Yeah.
Of someone who, again, problem is they passed away, but they have affidavits from so many of these people whose father was part of what they call the Air War College. It happened the next spring, and he was invited out to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where we know a lot of this material went. Anyways, he handled the debris from Roswell and told his sons right before he passed.
I want to know what this Laffy Taffy looking stuff that they're rolling out here is. That's crazy. Looks like slime. It's the blob.
Away, that he saw bodies, and one of them actually was still alive. It was not human-like, but not human. And that they were asked to kind of weigh in on what they should do with the situation. So I think when you put all these together, it makes a really good case that why would people, even though they're passed now on their deathbeds, make these confessions to their own children? And some of them have so much emotion and traumatized by it yet, today.
When you talk about bodies, I mean, it's hard to process. It's honestly hard to believe. But I go back to David Grush, the whistleblower who we interviewed here on News Nation, who is a high-level intelligence officer, had top security clearance. It's now been weeks. No one has discredited him. There are now official investigations in Congress. We had Senator Rubio just a few nights ago saying that other whistleblowers with firsthand knowledge of these kinds of incidents have come forward. I'm curious, Don, because you've been doing this a long time. Do you think this is a moment that we're in? I mean, do you think that we're actually going to start to get real concrete information from the government about this stuff?
My biggest regret when we worked with the late Congressman Stephen Schiff of New Mexico back in the early to mid-90s, when a good many of the first-hand witnesses were still with us here at Roswell. And we couldn't.
And that's when we saw a lot of the interviews that you see and that are used in these documentaries, and we're going to pop over and watch a little bit of one here in a second. But when you get into the interviews and stuff, most of those are from the same period in the 90s.
Get Washington to pay any attention. And how unfortunate that all those witnesses are now long gone. And so we missed a golden opportunity, because Roswell was the one case, not only being the granddaddy of them all, the fact that it's beyond just a sighting or gun camera footage or a landing where it's something very fleeting. With Roswell, it's clearly a case of show us the bodies. And
I'm interested in this mystery metal. The bodies are quite interesting, but this mystery metal is kind of the crux of this of the claim here, because it's been 75 years. Why haven't we seen it being utilized or being replicated or anything, or any new information about it and its properties? Why?
And these witnesses are gone. So we're having to rely on the very arbiters of the cover-up, and that being the Pentagon, to now roll over and say, well, now we're going to finally cooperate. When they have been the ones that have been running out the clock, stalling for time all these decades. And I can't emphasize enough, we need to keep in mind that the Pentagon is up to 4 official explanations regarding Roswell. 4. I mean,
that is true too. They're like, we found a UFO. They're like, nope, it was a weather balloon. And they're like, oh, it was a secret test. And then I don't know if that's recounting. They just go into further details about what kind of balloon it was. It wasn't exactly a weather balloon, because it wasn't testing the weather, was it? It was searching for Soviet bomb tests in the atmosphere.
I mean, none of us could get away with that in any other circumstances, but here, once again, the government, well, what do we expect? But we have to focus on where all the eyewitnesses have taken us, and they have taken us to that very first explanation, and that was that this was the recovery of an actual flying saucer.
Ben, the festival is this weekend. A lot of it seems like fun and games, and there's the funny cartoons, and people dress up and all that, and they have fun with it. I mean, do you think that confuses?
I kind of wish I could go to one of those festivals sometime. We should plan an outing for the Hive. We'll all go to Roswell and meet up at the festival.
Uses people because it sort of makes it into a game, when at the same time, we hear from Don, and now we hear from the whistleblower, and even Marco Rubio and other lawmakers who are trying to take this matter seriously. Do you think the festival in any way sort of gets in the way of that?
It's kind of a double-edged sword, to be honest, Brian. It's because without that, there may not be an interest at all for people to come and to pick up a book and actually read about it. But at the same time, the legitimate research, I find that, especially the generations today, they browse or graze information. They don't really dive into it. And that is frustrating because, like I said, what introduced me to it.
I don't know. I think it's always been that way. People have always just read the headlines on big stories and just what would I dress up as if I went to the festival? I might get like one of those big beehive haircuts and do like the Mars Attacks 1950s where they're pretending to be an alien.
Reading a book and reading the actual witness testimonies, and if you put that together, I think it's overwhelming for people to just say it was something prosaic. So I embrace both of it. I like having fun, the costumes and everything, but I think you're seeing that tone sort of change, especially with the media now and the little jokes and the jabs about little green, men and things like that. A lot of that might be psychologically based on fear. And that we just are
Nope, they're trying to prime us to be to be ready for the alien invasion, to prime our brains for our upcoming alien overlords, guys.
comfortable, and now that this is starting to come to light, how do we deal with this what I call a global reality compromising moment? We might start seeing some things in people's lives have to change, and how do you deal with that? So it's a long conversation, but I think it's necessary because humor, you know,
Yeah.
can help us get through that.
Yeah, it certainly seems like we're entering a more sort of serious time and serious phase of all of this. Ben and Don, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I know it's a busy time of the year there, and you guys were busy today investigating, so thank you for making time for us tonight.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks,
Thank
Brian.
you.
Hey, thank you for watching.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, it's Chris Cuomo. Whatevs. We're going to close that out. And then we are going to pull this up. And we're going to watch just a couple minutes of this.
Yeah, because there've been a few.
30 saucers have been sighted and are still unexplained. The following proposition could be established. There actually have been and may now be present in the Earth's atmosphere strange aerial objects. Some are of a geometric order. Others can only be described as brilliant light sources. Their form cannot be determined.
He said the crash was like the flying saucers that they have talked about, because there'd been a few comments on the news about flying saucers.
Yeah, it would be fun if we all showed up there with big giant beehive haircuts. People would be like, "What the hell?" It's like, yeah, well, because it's 1947. You're calling back to 1947. Come on now.
And he said it was one of the flying saucers crashed. And I don't think really Mother believed him at first. And he said, no, he said, I mean it. We went out there early today, which I don't know what time that was, but early to him could have meant they left before dark. And he said when they got there, they could see that there were two bodies that were laying on the ground outside of this craft, and that there was one, what he called little person. And he said there's one little person that was walking around, and he said they were still alive. So she asked him, you know, what do they look like? Do they look like us? And he said they were very small, about the size of a small 10-year-old child.
So we're talking like little bitty, like this. Not like a 10-year-old child. I guess that varies though, because there's like adults that are smaller than some 10-year-olds. Like my son was, when he was 10, he was taller than my ex-wife. I think my daughter was too.
But the head looked like the little insect that we played with, or that we saw around our house, called Child of the Earth. We all knew what that looked like, so nobody asked any questions on that. We assumed that meant that the head was too large for the body.
Jerusalem cricket. I had one of those not too long ago. They're really cool. They can get like huge, about the size of a potato. They're some of the biggest insects in the world. But yeah, Child of the Earth is what they're called by locals, or potato bugs sometimes. But yeah, their head is like massive compared to the rest of the body.
And it had no hair, and it would have large eyes. We knew that because that's what the Child of the Earth insect looks like. He said they looked quite a bit like us. He said they were a lot smaller than we are. Because when he said a small 10-year-old child, I knew he meant smaller than I was. And I wasn't very big at 12 years old. I was a little small for my age.
Child of the Earth. It's an interesting name for him, though.
And he said that the other two were dead, and that this one that was alive was very sad. But he emphasized, and he kept saying, there's no need for us to be afraid. They're not here to hurt us. And he said, we couldn't help them. And he was more upset with the fact that they couldn't help this
Hi, Derek.
person.
Thanks for joining us.
And that's something he really felt badly. That
Doing some
he couldn't
Roswell.
help this one that was alive.
See, yeah, what if they're not extraterrestrial? What if they're paraterrestrial, right? What if they're from a different wavelength and they crashed into our wavelengths of existence, but they're from Earth too, so they're actually our children of the Earth. Full circle. Yeah.
He just said said you could feel the hurt from this little person that was so saddened by the death of the others with him. And apparently they hadn't been there but just a few minutes, and he said the military came up and they made them leave.
Take the little person with you.
And
Hide
so-
him. That'd be a good movie. Let's make a movie about the people taking the little person with them and hiding it. And I guess that's kind of what E.T. is, though, right? That's kind of like the basis for the E.T. story, you know. But it didn't crash, though. He was left behind because the government crashed the party. But I think that some of the narrative, some of the framework of the story in E.T. is based around the Roswell incident. Maybe a few others as well, like the Flatwood Monster and things like that, but mostly Roswell. There's also the Aurora, Texas sighting. So in Aurora, Texas, there was a crash and there was a pilot, like they're talking about here. And then they say that the pilot died and they buried him. They buried him in his ship, too. Isn't that wild? And like, oh, we forgot where we buried him after that. Weird. Nice cover-up, right? I don't know. Some of these actions that were taken by these groups at the time don't make any sense to me.
They went back to the fire station, and he said there had not been a grass fire, which would have been their purpose for going. And they thought there could have been if it had been a normal plane crash. I don't think Mother really wanted to believe it at first. And he talked about how could we be so smug to think that we were the only ones that God could create.
I don't know about God creating them, but I am thinking that it's pretty smug to think that we would be the only organisms that evolved in this galaxy. Tsunami said I would dress like Lucy in that episode where her and Ethel get paid to dress up like aliens and go to the Empire State Building. Yeah. Oh, that's a callback to Nick at Night for me, Tsunami. I used to have a little black and white TV in my bedroom when I was like 5. And I would lay in there and watch Nick at Night while I played with my Ninja Turtles. And it'd be the Honeymooners and I Love Lucy and all that old black and white stuff. Oh, that's a callback. There's the temptation to dress up like Leela. I have the hair. I have the whole hair thing going to dress up like Turanga Leela from Futurama. Who wants to be Fry if I'm Leela?
You could create this Earth, you could create a lot of others too.
We'll need a bender too.
So that was just a conversation over dinner that night. And then there wasn't too much said about it for the next couple of days.
I tell you what, if we had gotten that when I was a kid, I would have been bouncing off the walls with questions. I guess maybe these kids didn't, like, oh, okay, aliens, sure. Dad knows what he's talking about. I'd have been like, oh my gosh, I want to go see them. Can we go see them?
Then I was at the fire station one afternoon because I'd gotten sick. I had to see the doctor, and we only had one vehicle. So I went back to work with Daddy. He came home at noon and picked me up on his lunch. And I had gone to the doctor and was sitting in the kitchen part of the fire station, and I was eating a glass of ice chips. And a state policeman came in, and he yelled at Daddy. He said, "Hey, Dan, come over here." And he said, "Get all the guys. I want to show you guys something."
The mystery
The
medal.
policeman reached into his pocket. And he said, "I don't think you guys got to see anything like this the other day." And he pulled his hand out of his pocket, and it was closed up. He opened his hand over the table and dropped a piece of material that, when it hit the table, it was all wadded up when it left his hand, and when it hit the table, it spread out like it was water.
Yeah, I want the super mystery medal.
They were asking him, how'd you get by with this? And he said, well, he had helped with some of the pickup of debris, and he had managed to sneak that one piece in his pocket. He said, I don't know how long I'll get to keep this before I get caught. Because he said, everybody they catch, they're taking away whatever they've got.
Last count, I had...
All right, yeah. So that was the part of the interview we didn't get to see the other night when we were looking at the interviews. I couldn't find that part where she's talking about how what the alien looked like. But yeah, child of the earth, like a Jerusalem cricket. I should see if Bugs in Cyberspace has more Jerusalem crickets. So I'm thinking that somewhere along 247 here, somewhere in this space, is the second crash site that they talk about. Because these people were from Corona, right? Roswell's further away. Roswell's down here. Now, Roswell has the Air Force Base. It's now called Roswell Air Center, but this is the Air Force Base. We did notice that all the fields out here are circles, which is really weird, but I don't know. And what's the Roswell welcome sign? Does it have a UFO? Yeah. Let's go down and look. Yep, got UFOs and broken down vehicles and yeah. All right. Anyway, so that was Cryptic Corner for today. Talking about the Roswell crash site, the second Roswell crash site, and what was seen at this site. And that was some weird little alien dudes with big giant heads. So, two dead, one alive, and very sad. And it sounds like maybe they're projecting emotions into the audience. I don't know. To the people that were coming to, that were responding to the crash. Anyway, that's it for Cryptic Corner. My life in the Hive audience, remember to stick around. But to my Cryptic Corner audience watching this on the premiere on Friday night, thank you so much for popping in. Please remember to be kind, take care, and we will see you next time.
Ladies and gentlemen, as the Commander-in-Chief of the United States Joint Forces, I am here today to inform you that a number of unidentified flying objects have appeared over many parts of our country. Though their exact origin remains to be fully determined, the FBI has informed me that it is very likely that these are visitors of extraterrestrial nature. I advise the American people to remain calm, not fall into panic, and wait for further announcements. We shall overcome this threat with confidence and vigilance. May God protect our souls.